And let's begin first, please, with the prayer. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors. We very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life? That you have done such great kindness to us. Therefore, we place our appeals before you, so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings. That our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be a desire to prepare our
hearts to feel awe
and love
for you.
May you
listen
listen
to these words of ours.
And may you open our encumbered
hearts through the mysteries of your Torah.
May
May this
study
be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory.
Sweet
incense.
May you shower down upon us
the light of our soul's source,
all the way
by which we find ourselves.
May the sparks of your holy servant, whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine,
sparkle.
May their merit, their
ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah,
their innocence,
and their holiness stand for us,
so as to prevent
us from stumbling when we study these words.
Their merit, may our
eyes be illumined by what we study.
In the saying of
the sweet singer of Israel.
Open my eyes
that I may gaze into
the wonders of your Torah. May the words of my
mouth and the thoughts of my heart
be
acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the eternal who grants wisdom. It is from the eternal's mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth.
Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. na 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 na. Oh na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Oh na 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 na, oh na na, oh na na, oh na na na, oh na 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 na. We are on page 327. We got pretty much to the bottom of the page. And just to remind ourselves, Rabbi Yitzchak is walking along with this family, a man and his two sons, and he's soaking up the teachings that these strangers are saying as they are on the road themselves. He has overheard them before. His curiosity is piqued. He says, "Oh, I want to follow these people." He walks along with them, and he hears them teaching all of these words of Torah. And the last words of Torah that we had was one of the sons opened the short paragraphs toward the bottom half of 327, which recapitulate pretty much teachings that we had before in the name of Rabbi Chia and Rashbi. How do we see Jacob's journey? Do we see it as a mythic paradigm of the journey, the unfolding of God's own being? That's one way to look at it. And the other way to look at it, and that means the journey of the Kutchabrichu, of Jacob is the Kutchabrichu, the male loving partner seeking union with his female partner. And we're on page 327, 327 in volume 2 of the Zohar. The other way to look at it is that this is not such a wonderful love story journey. It's actually a very dangerous and challenging journey, because it's a journey out from the realm of the holy and the good into the realm of the other side, outside the land of Israel, outside of goodness itself. And Jacob, the real Jacob, not just Jacob as a stand-in for God, but Jacob per se, as a righteous person who needs to confront all of the risks of what it means to live in the real world. That's what this is. So that's, in short, the last two teachings that we had. Rashbi is the one who says that we have to take seriously Jacob's story of leaving Beersheba going toward Haran as being a scary story of the person Jacob leaving everything comfortable, everything reassuring, everything that supports goodness, the land of Israel, and going off into the opposite realm. And Rabbi Chia was the one who said the first explanation, that this is simply a beautiful, thank you, a beautiful image that's really about how God moves within God's own desiring self. Let's continue. We're at the last three lines on 327. And now we have the younger one opened. Maybe that means that the previous teaching was one of the older ones. And just again, the delight of Rabbi Yitzchak, which we had right before that. If I had walked this way just to hear this, I would be so satisfied that I would be filled up to the brim with goodness. This is unbelievable, wonderful Torah. I'm so happy that I bumped into you. And now we're going to continue in that vein. The younger one opened. Who's gonna read? Yay, Beryl.
The younger one opened, saying, he encountered a certain place and stayed there for the night because the sun had set.
This is the second verse in Vayetze, right? The first verse is he left Beersheba, he went to Haran, and now Vayifga b'makom, he happened upon, he bumped into a place and stayed there for the night because the sun had set. We talked about the sun setting before, but now we're going to go into this opening up of this second verse. Go ahead. What is the meaning?
What is the meaning of Vayifga? He encountered a certain place. A king who comes to visit his consort must lamifga, entreat her, so that she will not seem like a piece of abandoned property. Furthermore, if he possesses golden beds and elaborately embroidered bolsters in a spacious palace, he should not spend the night there. If she prepares a bed on the ground in a castle of straw, he should leave his and spend the night there, giving her pleasure. As we learn here, for as soon as he came to her, what is written? He took of the stones of the place and put them at his head and lay down in that place to give her pleasure, for even the stones of her house enamored him to stay.
Okay, so this again repeats some of the stuff that we had before by looking at Jacob as a model of what of God seeking God's beloved. So we have that Jacob encountered the place. What does the place mean? The place is Shechina, and Jacob is the Kudshabrichu. So Shechina is the matronita, the consort, the matron, the queen, and Jacob is the male, divine, royal, majestic lover, and he comes toward her. And instead of reading this as he happened to come upon a place, this son says, well, let's take this first example, the first way of reading this as Jacob as a showing us the divine journey. That Vayifga b'makom doesn't mean by happenstance. It means that he pleaded with the place. He cajoled the place. He tried to, talk to the heart of the place meaning his lover, the Shechina. So Vayifga here means that he kept on trying to literally to touch the heart of his beloved. And this is what this son says, that a king who comes to visit his consort or his matronita, he needs to lemifga. Vayifga means he needs to talk sweet nothings to her. He needs to be, ingratiating. He needs to seduce her. He needs to, recognize that she is this person of importance and of value, so that she will not seem like a piece of abandoned property. She won't be hefkeruta. She won't be, and as he says in the note, as Matt says in the note, in a very, kind of skimpy way, that means that she's not just a loose woman. That I'm the man. I come. I have my way with you, and that's it. No, she's not hefker. She's not just a loose woman that's open to anybody and everybody that wants to have their way with her. She's your beloved. She's your partner. So treat her like a real precious human being. Talk to her. Try to recognize that she is someone. So that's what you have to do. So that's what Jacob did. So Jacob, when he comes, of course, this is taking the whole story in its simple meaning and turning it upside down and inside out. Instead of Jacob being, at loose ends, he's running from his brother, he's desperate, he's tired, he has nothing, he collapses on the road. The entire story, according to this reading, is the opposite. He comes to this place, the place, ha-makom. He knows what place he's coming to. He's coming to meet God. He's coming to meet God, his lover. And he's coming and he pours out his own charm and his own concern and his own attention. And he pays attention to ha-makom. He pays attention to the place, and he prepares the place for union between Jacob and her, so that they can be of one mind and of one heart and of one flesh, so to speak, within the divine realm itself. The union is being prepared attentively by Jacob. So therefore, what else happens? Furthermore, even if he possesses golden beds and elaborately embroidered bolsters, he's got a special palace. This is not Jacob, the poor refugee. This is Jacob Kutchabrichu. This is the Holy Blessed One who has everything, right? And who is ensconced in the upper realms of spiritual magnificence. And yet, what does the Kutchabrichu do? Kutchabrichu comes and says, I will be with you, Shechina. Shechina, you are, so to speak, in this lower level. You are, so to speak, in a not up in the spiritual highest realm. You're, after all, the one who has to be connected with the lower non-divine realm. I'll come to you, and whatever way you want to accept me, whatever way you make a bed for me, I will lie in that bed. So if you want to make a bed of stone and straw, then so be it. The point is that we're going to be together. So I don't insist on being lavished with all kinds of cushy stuff. I know I have that in my own home, but I'm coming to you now. So therefore, I take my cue from you, and I'm here to spend the night and give you pleasure to be with you in your space, right? And that's what we see. He took the stones of the place and he put them at his head and lay down at that place, right? Even the simple stones of this unappealing space were beloved to him because they were Shechinas. So this is, again, an example of the one coming to visit accommodating themselves to the conditions of the host. Here, Shechina is the host, and Kutchabrichu, the Holy Blessed One, accommodates himself to her conditions. And this, of course, we had earlier as well with the story of King David reaching out to God and praying to God. And we saw those verses that God goes along with what King David wanted to change, right? Kohanecha yilbishu tzedek, v'chasidecha yiranenu. Okay, David says, I want to change it. I don't want to have the song, the music on the left. I want to bring it onto the right. Right? David, the master of song, says, I want it to be so appealing to you, so gorgeous for you, that it's on the right-hand side. So this is an echo of that same teaching, here brought into the reading of the verse in the Torah portion. Any comments at this point? Okay, the answer is no. So what I want to do now, though, is before we go on with the rest of this story, I want to look at a parallel text in the Zohar. It's in the end of the Zohar, actually. It's a text that is very closely related to what we've just learned, but it's couched in a slightly different narrative framework. And since it's in volume 3, page 241, 242, the chances are actually we're not going to get there just by going page by page as we've been going. So I want to skip over some text now and land on this parallel text so that we can do it. But except when I decided to do this, unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to get the mat pages all set up for you. It's in volume 9 in Danny Matz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to read the text on the screen. Okay, so I hope everybody can see this. And also just a note, this is not Matt's. This is not Matt's translation. This is my translation. I did this translation before volume 9 came out. So whatever doesn't work here, it's my fault. And I give it a little subtitle here. This is volume 3. So it's all the way at the end, and it's 241 to, so this is still in Pinchas, but coming to the end of the Zohar. So, Beryl, can you see it? Can you read the screen?
We will see. If not, someone else will read, and we'll wait till I get my glasses next week.
Hold on. Let me see if I can make it just a little bigger.
Something just popped in front. Oh, okay.
No, that's no good.
No,
Wait a second. Wait. There.
Rabbi Shimon was walking Tiberias. Elijah bumped into him. He said, "Peace be unto you, sir."
So just already we have a parallelism. The bumped into him is Vayivka. So here it is, the happenstance is that Elijah encounters Rabbi Shimon, as he's walking on the road. And he says, Shalom Aleichem Mari, right? So peace be to you. Go ahead.
Rabbi Shimon said to him, "What is the Holy Blessed One engaged in studying in heaven?"
Okay, so this is a question which should have some echoes in earlier texts, earlier stories in the Gemara. We have a famous story that we've discussed in this group a number of times. The story is about the fight of who do we listen to? Do we listen to the sages in the study hall, or do we listen to a voice from heaven? And there's a big argument, a halachic argument among the sages, and Rabbi Eliezer, the great Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanus, Eliezer Agadol, is of one opinion, and Rabbi Yoshua leads the opposing camp, and the majority of the sages don't agree with Rabbi Eliezer. And then Rabbi Eliezer calls down heaven to speak up on his behalf, and I'm making the story very short. And then heaven says, yes, Rabbi Eliezer is right. And Rabbi Yeshua says, we don't listen to heaven. The Torah is not in heaven. The Torah is down here. It's our responsibility to make sense out of the Torah, and it doesn't make sense what you're saying. I don't care if God says you're right. It doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense to us. We're voting the other way. So Rabbi Eliezer is defeated. And then after that very shocking story is told, we have a story of another sage who right now I can't remember who it is, who's walking on the road and bumps into Elijah and asks Elijah, so what's going on with God? What's God doing in heaven at this moment when we decided that we're not listening to God? And the story then says that Elijah says to him, God is chuckling, God is laughing and saying, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. So, you raise them up and then they do what they think is right and you can't do anything about it. So God good naturedly accepts that that presumptuous human attitude of owning the Torah. So that's a little bit of an echo where Rabbi Shimon's question. What's God? The studying is in brackets. The literal is, what is God engaged in? What's God up to now? So Elijah, go ahead.
Oh, can I just ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Is Rabbi Shimon, like, are we? Is it supposed to be that casual? Like, he doesn't even give a peace unto you back to Elijah. He just goes straight into, like, no greeting, no nothing. Just like, oh, what's the Holy Blessed One engaged in? Like, is it he's just seizing his chance because this is Elijah, or is he just so casual about Elijah because he bumps into him every other day?
That's a good question. As we'll see when the story unfolds, Rabbi Shimon is hot stuff. So, the fact that he doesn't, do this kind of subservient or even just plain good-mannered greeting to Elijah is, interesting. Yes. Okay. So what did Elijah answer? He said to him,
he is engaged with studying sacrifices, and he said new words in your name. You are fortunate, and I have come to offer you greetings of peace, and I would like to ask you to agree to one thing. In the heavenly yeshiva, they asked a question. In the coming world, there is neither eating nor drinking. Yet it is written, I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride, etc. I have eaten my comb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk, etc. Song of Songs 5:1. How could the one who has no association with eating and drinking be the very one who said, I have eaten my comb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk.
Okay, so this is Elijah's statement. He says, first of all, God's learning Torah. And not just any subject in the Torah. At this particular moment, God is learning about the korbanot, about the sacrifices. And he has already said new insights that you have come up with. And God has credited you with saying those new insights. Wow, you are really something. God is indebted to you for teaching that Torah. And now I've been sent to ask you a question. So the inference being they can't figure this out, and they're going to defer to you. You're going to have to answer this question for the heavenly yeshiva. And their question is, what's their question? Anybody?
It's in the world to come, and on the one hand, we learn that you don't eat or drink, but yet on the other hand, we learn I've come to my garden, I have eaten my comb with honey, etc. So how in Song of Songs is that, I would just guess maybe that's not a reference to the world to come, but something much more down to earth, but I guess they took it as a reference to the world.
Well, so the world, the coming world, or the world of the spirit, the real world, and the world of God's uniting with God's beloved. The Song of Songs is that love song. And God is not corporeal. So what gives? What's with the anthropomorphism here? God doesn't get hungry. God doesn't eat. God doesn't drink. And all of a sudden, The Song of Songs, oh, I am so, my appetite is so aroused. I'm eating the honeycomb and the honey, the whole shebang. I'm drinking I'm just so ravenously hungry. How could this be? God is God. So this doesn't, how could this possibly be God saying this? And of course, this applies to the sacrifices as well, right? What's the deal with the sacrifices? God needs sacrifices. God's going to eat. There's going to be a pleasing odor to God when we offer sacrifices, as if God needs, smelling salts, or God likes the smell of roasted meat. What is this? So they need Rashbi to answer the question. And Elijah is the messenger, bringing the question to Rashbi. Okay.
Rabbi Shimon said, "And what did the Holy Blessed One answer them?" He said to him, "The Holy Blessed One said, 'Let Bar Yochai say it. So I have come to ask it of you.'"
Okay. So does God not know the answer? So God says, this is not for me to say the answer. I want Bar Yochai, Shimon Bar Yochai, to give the answer. So now it's up to you.
Said Rabbi Shimon, "How much affection
Chavivu.
did the Holy Blessed One feel for the assembly of Israel? And it is from the overwhelming love with which he loved her that he changed his actions from what he usually did. For even though eating and drinking are not his ways,
Or Choy.
out of love he ate and drank. When he came to her, he did her bidding. When a bride enters the chuppah and desires to eat, isn't it proper for the groom to eat with her, even if it is not his way
Or Chai to do so. Yeah.
to do so? This is what is meant when it is written, 'I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride, since I have come to her in order to enter with her to the chuppah. I have eaten my comb with my honey,' etc."
Okay. So Rabbi Shimon says, this is all God changing God's own nature, God's own way, or Chai, to be more united with whatever makes Shekhinah feel comfortable. Right? So even though God won't eat, God doesn't need to do all of that stuff, but if she wants it, then he goes along with it. He doesn't say, oh, you do what you do and I do what I do. No. So since he wants to be united with his bride, with Shekhinah, with the assembly of Israel, and of course the assembly of Israel has two connotations. Besides being Shekhinah, who else is the assembly of Israel?
David.
And us. The assembly of Israel, this is what Freud said. Sometimes the collection of Israel is simply the collection of Israel. It's all the collected people of Israel. So that's the assembly of Israel is Shekhinah, but who collects, who takes all the love of Israel, Jacob, Kutsha Barichu. The assembly of Israel is David, because David is the king who united and brought together all of Israel. But the assembly of Israel is each and every one of the members of Israel, of the congregation of the assembly of Israel. So God's love for Shekhinah, God's love for Knesset Yisrael, always works on many levels in the Zohar's way of speaking. And here's Rabbi Shimon saying, therefore God changes God's own way and accommodates God's self to what we, or what Shekhinah is accustomed to, or the way that Shekhinah or us, the way we live and behave. Go ahead. And we have learned.
And we have learned this from David, who invited the Holy Blessed One and changed his actions from that which was his usual way. or Chayeh,
or Chay.
or Hey, of the Holy Blessed One, and the Holy
Now
Blessed.
this is now gonna be the parallel example that we had already before about David. Go ahead.
Wait, I just lost my place.
3 lines down.
And the Holy Blessed One accepted it and did his will. He invited the king and the matron with him. This is what is written. Arise, Eternal One, to your resting place, you and your ark of power. King and matron as one.
That you is king, ark of power, ark, right? You know, Aron Uzecha, right? The ark of your power is Shechina. By the way, this is the Torah reading for this Shabbat, is our construction of an ark in order to put the O's of God, in order to put God's power into the ark, to put the Torah into the ark. That's what we're going to be reading in this Shabbat's Torah reading, right? So this is David's invitation, right? You and your ark of power, come visit me together. King and matron as one.
This is what is written. Arise, Eternal One, to your resting place, you and your ark of power, king and matron as one. So as not to separate them, he changed the clothing and changed the actions of the king. This is as is written. Your priests shall wear righteousness, and your pious ones
Chasidecha,
shall sing. For the sake of David, your servant, etc. Your priests shall wear righteousness.
no, question mark. Your priests should wear righteousness.
It should be your Levites, for righteousness is from the side of the Levites, and your pious ones shall sing.
Question mark. Your pious one should sing.
It should be, and your Levites shall sing, for song and music making are from the side of the Levites. But he changed it and said, your priests and your pious ones who are from the right side.
Okay, so this is what we had before, where David is saying, out of your love, let your love overcome the left-hand side and let it bring everything that's on the left, let it be brought over and be saturated and overwhelmed by the love. Let it all be pushed over to the right. So that all of the things that we normally associate at on the side of judgment, limitation, restriction, no. Let it all be flowing out of your own generosity and loving. So this is David begging God to go along with it, even though that's not the way God set it up. God set it up that there's a right side and a left side. And now David says, no, please, let it just be the right side. The Holy Blessed One.
The Holy Blessed One said to him, David, this is not my way.
Orach Dili.
David said, for the sake of your servant, David, do not turn aside the face of your anointed one. The adornment that I have instituted, please do not change it.
Lo teshanele.
He said to him, David, since you have invited me, I should do your wishes and not my own.
Okay, so this is God giving in and say, well, I'm a guest in your house. I've come to you. You're the host. Therefore, I'll listen to what you want. Okay, so I will accept that way of doing it. Go ahead.
And we learn proper behavior.
Orcha de Alma, right? Derech Eretz.
From this, for when anyone invites another, the one coming to visit him should act according to his will, even though this is not his own way.
Etc. Go ahead.
Thus, and he took the places rocks, and he put it under his head, etc.
This is, of course, the verse we have now in our text. This is about Jacob.
Since the groom came to the bride, even though it was not his way, to sleep except with pillows and blankets, while she gave him stones to lie on, he would accept it all with heartfelt agreement. Thus it is written, and he slept at that place, on those very rocks, even though this was not his way. So here as well, I have eaten my comb with my honey, even though they were not his ways, even though they were not his ways to do so, because of love for the bride. And with all of that, this is the bride's home, and not anywhere else. In his own place, he does not eat or drink. In her place, he eats and drinks. This is as it is written, I have come to my garden.
A little more.
The angels sent my holy blessed one to Abraham, never eating or drinking in their own place. For Abraham's sake, they ate and drank.
Okay, so this is then back to the famous story of Abraham with the 3 strangers. But this is the principle that Rashbi now is teaching, right? That yes, in and of God's self, God is pure, spiritual, completely untouched by any physical or material aspects of existence. But when God wants to interact with the lower realms, God puts God's own self into the place, literally the place that God is in, and follows according to what is desired and what is meaningful and what is pleasurable in that place. So therefore, God will eat in the lower realms, even though, of course, God is completely separate from any kind of physical needs or desires. But it's different. The desire that God had is a desire of the love that God has for the assembly of Israel. When God sends angels to Abraham, angels don't eat and drink. But when Abraham feeds them, they'll eat and they'll drink, because this is to make Abraham feel like he's doing something that's meaningful, right? It's not for their need, but it's to respect and honor and satisfy Abraham. Okay, any comments on this so far? All right, good.
Yeah, this has a tremendous connection with Christianity. And I'm not saying, I'm not talking that Jews learned it from Christians, but that's the whole justification for the Christian religion, that God manifests himself in a way that's important to human beings. So I just wanted to mention it.
Right. So I think that there are, the reason I kept putting in this orcha, etc. This is, of course, one of the leitmotifs literarily in this text. But I want to say this is, of course, the way of the world in general. Every place that has some kind of struggle of how do you connect with God is going to figure out that there needs to be some connection back from God to us. When Christianity, works its path out the way it works it out, that's the path that they construct. It has that underlying commonality, but of course it has huge differences as well. Yeah, and of course Christianity didn't invent it. Is the Zohar in conversation with Christian ideas? For sure. But the idea that God is working with human beings, just again to mention our Torah reading that's coming up this Shabbat, That's that's one of the things that God is dealing with in this whole sanctuary business, right? V'asuli migdash v'shachanti b'tocham, right? If they'll make me a house of wood and gold and copper and fabric, then I will dwell within them. I will come and I will visit. I will be there, even though, as Solomon says when he dedicates the first temple, the whole world can't accommodate you, and we're making you a house. And the answer is yeah, because God says, you know what? If you'll make me a house, I'll be happy. For you, I'll be happy. Okay, so that's Rashbi's answer, and this is God ceding to Rashbi the privilege of saying this answer. So this is also, and maybe in this case, just to be a little polemical here, this is not a Christian idea, because this is not God taking on flesh and giving the answer. This is God letting the human being give the answer. He says, okay, good. This is the deal. This is the Torah that I can offer you. This is what Rashbi says as an answer to the heavenly yeshiva's question. And just one more point about that. This is again the flipping, right? Who are the ones that are supposed to have questions about this relationship? It should be absolutely clear from the perspective of the heavenly realm. We're the ones that are always having questions. That's why we're studying the Zohar, right? We're the ones that are always exploring and everything. And yet, in this story, it's a Purim story. Everything is topsy-turvy. It's the heavenly yeshiva that can't figure this out, and it's Rashbi who gives them the answer. So Elijah, this is the coda to the story. Last paragraph, Beryl.
He said to him, Rabbi, I swear by your life that this word is what the Holy Blessed One wanted to say. But in order not to give credit to himself before the assembly of Israel, this word went out to yourself. How meritorious are you in the world? Your master is praised through you above. About you it is written, the righteous rule the fear of God.
Okay, so now we get the heavenly messenger, Elijah. Eliyahu says, you know what? Believe it or not, that's exactly the answer that God wanted to give. I know it. I know that that's what it is. So then if that's the answer and God had that answer at the ready, so then the question is, so what's all this game about? Why does God say, let Bar Yochai say it? Why didn't God say the answer? So in order not to give credit, there's a typo there. Yeah, should have a 2 in there. To himself before the assembly of Israel. This word went out to yourself. Right? So God steps back, a little tzimtzum here. God steps back and says, I don't need to be honored with knowing all the answers. Of course I know all the answers. Who cares? I want you to say the answer. I want you, Rashbi, to be able to say it. And then people will say, wow, this Rashbi, he really taught some beautiful Torah, right? And that, how meritorious are you in the world? And your master is praised through you above, right? By being the servant and the teacher on behalf of God, God is exalted, God is brought up higher through the human effort. And the verse is, the righteous rule the fear of God. This is a translation that tries to take a verse that means something else. But here, that they have the authority. The fear of God is not God's own power that then puts us in our place. The righteous are the ones who rule. The righteous are the boss. So, and that of course comes back to that Talmudic story where Rabbi Joshua says, Rabbi Yoshua says to Rabbi Eliezer, Lo b'shamayim, it's not in heaven anymore. The Torah is ours. It's our job to make sense out of the Torah. And it doesn't matter whether God knows the answer or not. We have to come up with our answers as only we can. Now, of course, the difference here is that in the Zohar story, God actually holds back and agrees with Rashbi's answer. In the Gemara's story, it's much more radical. God is expressing an opinion that is counter to the human opinion, and nevertheless, the humans overrule God. So the righteous overrule God. So, and that's again what we have in our story as well, that God is a guest in this place, in this human world. Right? It takes everything upside down. Yes, of course, God created the world. Everything is God's world. But the truth of the matter is, once God creates the world, we're the boss down here. The world is our world. And now the question is, how does God accommodate God's self to our world? So I want to now share with you some what I find to be interesting and important teachings from Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, one of the great commentators on the Zohar. On this section that we just went through, he has a couple of pieces that that I'd like us to look at. So this is from the book Or HaChama, which is a collection anthology of Zohar commentaries and includes a lot of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero's commentary. So this is a comment from the beginning of the story where Elijah says, when Rabbi Shimon says, what's God up to? And Elijah says, well, he's been saying some new words of Torah in your name. Right? He's giving you credit. So this is Rabbi Moshe Cordovero's explication. Okay, Beryl.
The meaning is that the Torah and the souls of Israel are one matter and are equivalent. The testimony to this is that Torah is in Tiferet, wherein lies the secret of Israel, who are 600,000. And each soul has an identifiable element of Torah which cannot possibly be revealed by another. Only that very soul must reveal those secrets. And as long as that soul has not revealed those secrets, the Holy Blessed One does not reveal them to the righteous at all, except to Moses, our teacher. Peace be upon him. For even what any veteran student will eventually innovate in the Torah was told to Moses. But he was not given permission to reveal it at all. And this is the meaning of in all my house, he is the faithful one.
Okay, so what Ramak is saying here is he's developing a number of earlier ideas. Each person in Israel, the mythic number is the 600,000 that went out of Egypt. Each individual unique soul in Israel has a piece of Torah that depends on that soul, and the Torah's revelation in this world can only be done by that unique soul. So whatever I teach comes from my soul. Whatever you teach comes from your soul, and we're all needed. We're all necessary. It can't all be in one place. So first, the Torah, of course, abides with God, with the Holy Blessed One. But it has to come down to this world. So the first thing that happens is that there is one human being who is vouchsafed the entirety of the Torah, the all-encompassing embrace of the Torah, and that is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our teacher. But Moses is forbidden to teach the whole Torah. Just like we have in our story in the Zohar, where God is not going to say the answer. Somebody else, Rashbi, has to say the answer. It's not God's place to say the answer, and it's not Moses' place to say the answer, to say that piece of Torah, because that is promised and that is actually attached specifically to the very nature of somebody else's soul. Okay, and this is the meaning.
And this is the meaning of the Holy Blessed One telling Moses, Eliezer, my son, declares it tahor, ritually pure, based on Tanhuma Ba'alot.
Okay, that's not so important for us right now.
Akiva, my son, says such and such. That is, that particular soul is worthy of revealing such and such in the Torah. However, to all other righteous who are not at Moses level,
Moses, that's a typo, yeah.
certainly the Holy Blessed One does not reveal to them secrets that the righteous person has not revealed yet, but only to those that have
only those
that have already been revealed. And this by saying them in the name of the person who said them.
Right, so each piece of Torah is specifically and uniquely credited to the person who brought it down. And that's why our rabbinic traditions have this continual custom of citing the teaching in the name of a particular sage. And even God says this in the name of the human beings who have said these legal opinions, without God saying, of course, it's my Torah, it's my opinion. No, these are all very, very much specific to those people.
That is what is meant by new words, those that Rabbi Shimon created already. But this question had not yet been taught in public by Rabbi Shimon. But he was going to reveal them in the future before his death, because it was a portion of soul. And when the righteous reached this question and asked it, the Holy Blessed One said, here is Bar Yochai, and this is a portion of his soul. So let him say this exposition.
So we have again the question also of when. Right? When do you reveal the teaching? When do you bring out that piece of your soul that hasn't been expressed yet? And maybe your intention is to do it some other time, but here in this particular story, we have this kind of push. We have this moment where heaven needs the Torah to be revealed, that piece of Torah, that piece of teaching that only Rashbi can put out into the world. And so Elijah has to come down and prod him and say, hey, we need you to speak up here about this question. Right? We are powerless before your your soul's own power. Other new words that you said before, now we can share them with the world. Now everybody has it. We give you credit and we say it. But in this particular case, you haven't brought it out yet. We need you to put it out into the world. So revelation becomes a human endeavor. Right? When God comes down on Mount Sinai and reveals the 10 commandments that were never ever heard ever before from the mouth of the divine, in a smaller kind of way, the words of Torah that each individual can bring out are words of revelation, and they depend on that person opening their mouth at the right time in order to give them out into the world. And then this is toward the end, where Elijah says, oh yes, what you answered, that's a great answer, and that's exactly what God wanted to answer. Go ahead.
Had Tiferet revealed the teaching by himself without arousal from below, undoubtedly then Shekinah would have been adorned from above without any female waters.
Mayim Nukvin.
Then Tiferet, taking all credit for itself before Shekinah, For there was no action of righteous at her hand to adorn her with the secret as is proper, except were he to shower her with his adornment himself. Then, God forbid Shekinah would be humiliated for taking abundance and adornment from Tiferet without female waters from below.
Okay, so let's just stop for a second. This is a little bit in parallel with the text that we read tonight from our section of the Zohar. When the king comes to visit the matrona, when the king comes to visit his consort, he can't just have his way with her without first arousing the beloved herself. He can't treat her as just his property. He can't treat her as just hefker, as just anybody can have their way with her. No, he has to have her be persuaded, be seduced, be turned on by his words, so that she will reach out to him and then he can reach out to her. That's the Mayim Nukvin. That's the female arousal. Female waters need to be started. How are the female waters started? By us, by the righteous in this world. So if the righteous in this world don't say the Torah that they have within them to say, then of course God can say that Torah. But that would be such a one-sided way of revealing revealing the Torah, that Shekhinah would be bereft. Shekhinah would feel humiliated by being showered by all of this love, but without being asked anything, without being treated as a partner. What good is that? Instead of the love being a beautiful gift, it would actually be a bludgeoning. It would actually be something that would be demeaning and destroy her. So God has to step back, and God has to say, therefore, go ahead.
It was there. Okay. Therefore, he said it. Let Bar Yochai say it. In order that the revelations of the secret cause the union properly adorning Shekhinah without shame, and, on the contrary, she could say before Tiferet, look at this son whom I've given birth to and raised for you, who has created this new insight in Torah and made these adornments. Therefore, he sent out these words to the material world, the place from which the adornments rise from below to above. Then Shekhinah was adorned before Tiferet through this mystery that Rashbi revealed. And this is the intent of his saying. The word went out to yourself. And this is the meaning of the righteous. Who is the righteous below? Rules the fear of God. Who is Shekhinah to adorn her and thus turn her to love?
Right. So this is not a question, this is a statement. When the verse says the righteous, which means the righteous below, that the righteous rules Yirat Hashem, the fear of God. The fear of God is another name for Shekhinah. The righteous below, not the righteous above. We could have imagined it means that God above has his way, so to speak, with Shekhinah, without asking any questions, as is his right. The answer is no, it's not his right. We need the righteous below. We need the human being to rule over Shekhinah, to adorn her, to beautify her, and to prepare her so that then she's ready for the love of the Kudsha B'richu, of the Holy Blessed One. And then the uniting between the two lovers can happen as a uniting of equals. But the only way that that can happen is if we help out. The Torah needs to be spoken out by human beings. So the necessity for Rashbi to say those words, otherwise those words would be imprisoned and would never take on their full and rightful place in the world. If God would say those words, they would be terrible. They would be antithetical to everything that those words were meant to accomplish. If Rashbi says those words, then they adorn Shekhinah and they bring about a loving coupling between the two aspects of God. So this is God's withholding for the sake of God, because this is the way it has to be in this world. God has to accommodate in that way to allow the process of the unfolding of God's love to follow in the right way. Any comments now?
Yeah, so Rabbi, does this point up an enormous difference between what the Zohar is saying and the whole Christian idea of accommodation? Because the Christian idea is through pain and death, and this is through eroticism and love.
Right. So I mean, yeah, I'm trying not to go into that kind of comparative stuff too much, but yes, I think that's pretty accurate. Obviously, as a Christian scholar would bring a wealth of other insights into it to try to make this maybe more complicated. But from in this particular simple way of looking at the contrast, yes, that's exactly the point. And and it comes from what I was saying before. Which direction are we going? The Zohar is establishing somehow or other. There's an echoing going on. The Zohar is establishing this. To put it in a crass, gross kind of way. Instead of saying that there is no salvation except through this divine being that has turned into a human being, what the Zohar is saying is there is no salvation except through a human being who's a human being. So that God needs that human being to do what God is forbidden to do. If God would do it, it would be absolutely a disaster. So somebody's about to say something. Okay, I'm going to close this off.
Rabbi?
And now maybe except for Rich, I can see everybody. Yes, Rich, how are you?
Good. So I'm just wondering if this is all another way, circling back to where you started, of the preference for the Zohar to learn not in the yeshiva, but out on the road.
Okay.
If you learn if God does all the speaking about Torah, it's like being stuck inside reading from the book, as opposed to being out on the road among the kids that we encountered in this previous story and learning Torah from real people.
Right. So I don't want to push that too far. Obviously, that's a big part of what I'm saying in the book that I wrote, that this kind of like all comes together in a big package. It's not an accident that the Zohar is basically positioned outside of the study hall. But of course, the study hall is not the heavenly study hall. The study hall is the human study hall. So the Zohar can't dismiss the human study hall completely. But it pushes it, the envelope even further by having all of this Torah happening outside. And as you say, and as we've noticed a number of times, the Torah is not just happening. The story we just read is Rashbi's preeminence, right? This glorious, amazing celebration of Rashbi telling the Torah to heaven. But what we have in our story is it ain't only Rashbi, and it ain't only Rabbi Yitzchak, and it ain't only all the Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Abba and Rabbi Chia, all the other disciples of Rashbi. Even these people who are nameless and who are just passing through, they actually also are vehicles of saying beautiful Torah. So yeah, that's part of what of the intricate, interweaving of motifs and of elements of the story. There's some stuff here in the chat. Let me take a look at this. So I never understood until this what was meant when I attended a bat mitzvah, the rabbi said that the congregation wanted the child to find herself in the Torah. I thought it meant that the child should project into the Torah, but it really means that the Torah consists of each person. And the question is to have each person to enunciate or find their letter in the Torah so as to speak. Very good. Very, very good. And that's, yeah, that's Reb Zalman used to make this a point very, very strongly and often. And he used to talk about this a lot on Simchas Torah. When we open up the whole, he was the one basically who invented the beautiful custom of unrolling the entire Torah on Simchas Torah, and having everybody look into the Torah and feel that they have that piece and find their place, find their piece. But it's not just finding it in, as you say, but then to take it out, to say it out, right? To put it back into this world in a living way, and not just as it sits there on the page or on the parchment. Yeah. There's a story that's told about Reb Chaim Volozhiner. Reb Chaim Volozhiner was the preeminent disciple of the Vilna Gaon, who was the greatest rabbinic scholar of the 18th century. And Rabbi Chaim Volozhiner, who founded the Volozhin Yeshiva, which was considered the greatest yeshiva of the 19th century. So he was a great Talmudist in his own right. And the story is told that one time, and I've told the story before, he was on his way to visit the Gaon, to visit his teacher, the Vilna Gaon. And along the journey, on the road, so to speak, he stops off at a particular town, and he's coming to he's looking forward to meeting the Vilna Gaon because he has this amazing chiddush, this amazing new insight of Torah that he's just so delighted and so beaming that he came up with, and he wants to tell the Vilna Gaon to share it, that he came up with this beautiful piece of Torah. So he's on the way, and he stops off for the night, like Jacob. He stops off at a little town, and he goes into the base medrash there. He goes into the little shul that's also a study hall. So in this story, he actually goes in. He's not on the road, Rich. And it's between Mincha and Mariv, and they have a little chevra shas. They have a little, like what we do Sunday mornings. We study a little Talmud. So, and this was, all over Europe, this was what happened. People that during the rest of the day, they'd be doing their menial work. They'd be stevedores. They'd be, peddlers. They'd be doing, whatever, hard physical work they could do. Then they would spend, a half hour and study a little bit of Torah in the shul before they would go home and go to bed. So there's this guy, a balagola. There's this guy who just like a plain simple Jew who has a wagon that he drives around, and he's leading the Talmud class. And lo and behold, they get exactly to the place where Reb Chaim came up with this unbelievable new insight. And the balagola who's running the class gets to that part of the text. And he goes, so there's a little difficulty here. And the way that you resolve it is by saying X, Y, Z. And he says exactly what Reb Chaim had figured out. It's exactly the same thing. This simple Jew says something that this greatest, Talmudic mind struggled to be able to conceive of, and finally made a breakthrough. And then this little nobody says the same thing without blinking an eye. So the story goes, as often happens in the Talmud as well, that this great sage has what's called chalisha sadas. He's like taken aback. He's nonplussed. He goes, what the heck is going on here? This, cost me blood, sweat, and tears to be able to make this conceptual breakthrough and so on. And this guy, who's a nobody, he says it in a half a second. So it bothers him. He gets to the Gaon, and he says to him, Rebbe, I have to, share with you. I'm ashamed to say it, but I really feel upset that I had this unbelievable new teaching that I wanted to, tell you. And then here it is, and he tells him the story. And the Gaon says to him, what do you expect? Once you brought that teaching out, it's in the world. And then anybody has access to that teaching, right? Once you finally actually brought it into this world, then it's now at home in the world. And it's not just for you, it's for everybody. So you gave that Torah to that person to be able to understand, because you brought it out of your special capabilities, your own special soul spark, but that never stays just for you. Then it goes for everybody. So that's what happens here. A lot of what we've studied in the Zohar, in our Zohar section, we already had it with Rashbi and with Reb Chia and so on. And now we're getting it again from these unknowns, but they have it also, because now it's in the world. Now, lo b'shamayim hi, it's not in heaven. It's been brought down into this world, and then it's shared.
Even though it wasn't communicated.
That's what
By the originator.
That's what Reb Chaim thought. What he needed to announce it. He needed to publish a scholarly article. He needed to whatever. And this Gaon says no. Once you brought it down, you brought it down. Okay, that's it for tonight. Next week we're taking a vacation because it's Purim. Everybody's invited to celebrate. Okay, so God willing, we'll continue the following Thursday.
Good night.